Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2025 release Clown in a Cornfield. It's a Shudder exclusive and it's coming to Shudder on Friday, August 8th, so this is a no spoiler review. I was pretty stoked to see this finally. I know it had a theatrical run, but ever since I saw a trailer for it earlier in the year and had also found out that it was based off what I believe is a trilogy of young adult horror books that are pretty highly lauded, I got pretty excited about it. So I was like, oh, maybe this is a pretty fun slasher film with a little extra to it. And I'm just going to say off the bat, I didn't love this film, but it's pretty solid and I would recommend checking it out, especially if you already have Shudder and it's going to be on Shudder. So, it won't cost you anything in that sense. So just check it out then. But anyway, let's get into it. This one's directed by Eli Craig, and I have liked some of what Eli Craig has done. The first film that people will be very familiar with is Zombieland. I was middling on Zombieland, but I know a lot of people love that one, and I see why. But the ones I really liked more are Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I love that wonderful horror comedy, and another great horror comedy that's severely underrated, not a lot of people know about. It's still on Netflix, Little Evil. Little Evil is so good. It's basically like a horror comedy version of The Omen. Just think about that. It has Adam Scott in it and Bridget Everett for all my Somebody Somewhere fans out there. But yeah, definitely check those out. So I was pretty excited seeing Eli Craig was involved. This one's written by Craig as well as Carter Blanchard, who wrote script for Independence Day Resurgence, which I thought wasn't terrible. And based on novel by Adam Cesare, who also had some films based off of Lost Night at Terrace Lanes and Ghost Game. And again, Shudder exclusive coming Friday, August 8th. So there's not a lot of synopsis with this one, but the opening sequence is basically showing a clown. It's called Clown in a Cornfield. It shows kind of this rural town, and it's back in 1991, and it shows a teenager ending up getting killed by someone wearing a clown outfit and mask. And so it's this moment of like, okay, well, is this something like supernatural? Like it's a supernatural clown killer, or is this actually just a person, kind of like a Scream type film or something like that? There are cornfields involved, obviously, and then it kind of jumps ahead to present day, and it's the same town, and the town looks a lot more kind of depressed and dilapidated, and it has that kind of like hollow feel to it in a sense, and then it's just about a father and daughter who end up moving to the town because the father needed to get away after the mother passed away. And the daughter, is butting heads with him at this point because he's not dealing with the grief all that well. And she doesn't like the fact that they had to move to this, nonetheless, to this type of town. But yeah, so it's basically about following the daughter mainly. And then some things end up happening again. You can probably guess what starts happening again since it's called Clown in a Cornfield and based off of that opening sequence I talked about. So that's where I'm going to leave it. It is a slasher. It's a slasher. They do something kind of interesting with it. So that's always what I look for with slasher films. So I was happy enough in that sense. The opening scene gets your attention and sets a bit of a tongue-in-cheek tone to the film, which is very important. Although I will say it was kind of weird because they set this tongue-in-cheek tone in the beginning of the film, so you're like, oh, this is kind of going to be really poking fun at itself, kind of poking fun at the slasher genre probably, and then it kind of like backs off of that for quite a while, and then it kind of brings it back later on. I think it's kind of like, it's in that opening sequence, and then it backs off it for like probably about a half an hour or so, maybe a little bit more, and then it kind of brings it back in. So it feels kind of weird, and it feels like that tongue-in-cheek kind of should have been there the entire time. So that is kind of one of my issues with the film, and it also ends up contributing to not the greatest of pacing. It's not terrible pacing by any means, but it's not the best pacing I've seen with a slasher film like this. It's a little on the slower end, even though it is around an hour and a half. I think a little bit longer than that. You do get a pretty good sense of the town and how people there have been living since 1991, because again, starting in 1991, you see how it is, and then jump ahead, and they're introducing you to plenty of people who have been living there, primarily the youth, because that's who the clown in the cornfield has typically gone after. And why? Why is that the case? Maybe you'll find out. The humor starts out really not hitting, I will say. The whole, like, slightly horror comedy of it wasn't going great in the beginning of the film, especially with that large portion I said where they kind of backed off the tongue-in-cheek aspect of it. And it just, I don't know, like, there were a lot of attempts at, like, being funny, and it just wasn't very funny at all. It was more like cringe, and I was just like, but then later on in the film, especially when it starts getting a lot more fun, which I'll talk about with a no spoiler way later, it does get a little bit funny. So it will, you start to warm up to it. It starts to pick up. They get a little bit better. It's kind of like when they were writing, they didn't have their better comedic ideas until much later. Well, that's assuming that they wrote the script in a sequential order or chronological order, but maybe they didn't. Once the story starts going, it feels very cliche. So this is where it would have been very important to keep that tongue-in-cheek the whole time, so people know this is kind of like poking fun at the genre. It's kind of parody of the genre, because when they back off of that tongue-in-cheek aspect, you're kind of like, oh, well, okay, maybe they're trying to be, like, kind of serious about this one. And it becomes confusing for that reason, because when you're watching it in that sense, it just seems like old, bored, tired slasher film, even though there is something interesting to it at the end. So the music used does punch it up a bit. It gives it some nice energy to the film. I like that, kind of injecting some kind of upbeat, fun stuff in there. So I'm a fan of that, and the score was well done as well. There's a kind of funny scene involving people thinking something real is not real. And you'll know what I mean if you've seen the film or when you see the film. It's a very important part that's relatively, well, on the earlier end of the film, where it's like people are like, oh, this isn't actually a thing, and then they find out it is. And I thought that was particularly funny. I really like that aspect of the film. And there's some good practical effects during that as well. 50 minutes in is when things really do ramp up, and this is where it becomes very fun. And this is the portion of the film where it's like, okay, this is the slasher I was looking for with this film. It just kind of sucks that it took 50 minutes to really get there. I understand that they kind of need to take things slow in the beginning because they need to establish characters, establish the town, the story, all that type of stuff, but that can be done within the first 30 minutes easily. So again, pacing issues there. Towards the final quarter of the film, it definitely seems like it's supposed to be a parody of a slasher, but it was played a bit too serious prior to that. I've kind of already been hitting that kind of hard. There are some okay deaths in this film. There are a few where you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. I like the practical effects. I like the creativity a little bit of the kill, but there are a lot of kills in this that are just very boring to me. And I was just like, I feel like when you're putting a film like this out these days, a slasher, it's got to be kind of creative. Like, that's what people are kind of looking for. And at first, going into it, knowing it was based off some young adult books, I was like, I wonder if they're really going to shy away from the gore, but they didn't, and I was very happy about that. This is definitely an R-rated film. They could have easily been like, well, let's kind of make this PG-13. I was like, I don't like that, but yeah. So they made the right choice there. The ending was pretty solid. I did enjoy the ending. Like I said, when it hits like that 50-minute mark and on through to the end, it's a good time. And I really did enjoy that portion. And like I said, the pacing gets so much better at that point. It has a very poignant message to it, but I wish it was done a little less overtly, like a little more subtextual. But at the same time, I wrote that down and I started thinking about it. I'm like, you know what, though? Maybe this specific message they're trying to send really does need to hit people over the head, because there are some kind of more dense people out there when it comes to this type of message. So I don't know. Maybe they did feel like they really needed to be more overt with it from the standpoint of what I typically like in films like this. I wish it was a lot more subtextual, because I was picking up on it before it was kind of called out to death. But yeah, I mean, I can kind of understand why they did it. And I will say Kevin Durand is in this. And I know a lot of people have kind of liked him in things like Abigail. You know, he was in Abigail. I don't like his performances typically, but I will say that I really enjoyed his performance in this. He was a joy on screen in this film. So if you are a Kevin Durant fan, I think you're going to be on cloud nine with his performance in this. And if you're not a Kevin Durant fan, you may have found your moment where you become his fan for at least one movie. That was my situation. So, anyway, out of 5 stars, half stars in play, I'm gonna give this a 3-star rating. There were times, especially towards the end of the film, where I was like, "Oh man, I maybe going a 3.5 on this one." It's just not there though. I really couldn't justify it to myself. So, 3 stars, still quite solid. I definitely would recommend it. It's just so hard to put out like new, interesting, fun slasher films these days, and I think this is a decent enough entry. So I would recommend checking this one out. It's not my favorite film of the year. It's not going to make my top 10 or anything, but it was a good time. I did not regret the time I spent watching it. So anyway, everyone, please let me know your opinions if you've seen the film, or when you do, you can put that down in the comments. If you want to get involved with my channel and help me out by supporting me, you can thumbs up on the video to help me out. Hit the subscription. Become a subscriber. You can become a member of the channel for a few bucks per month, and there are 3 different tiers for that. The top tier getting exclusive videos that no one else is getting, and everyone who does a tier, even the lowest tier, which I think is just like $1.99, is getting access to all of my videos at least a week early for every single video. So there's some good perks, and there's Discord access, I think at the 2nd tier and up. But anyway, you can check that out if you're interested. Oh, you can also hit the notification bell button if you want to know when I'm putting up new videos. But anyway, regardless, thank you for taking your time to watch this, and until next time, keep it brutal.